Travis Wayne Goodsell. Since Trump has brought out that he's going to issue martial law for our election day, I thought I would give you a video on martial law in the United States history. Excuse me. And interestingly, 3, possibly 4, with the American Revolution, involved the LDS Church. Isn't that interesting? The New Orleans War of 1812, or New Orleans in War of 1812, also involves a tie and connection to the LDS Church, which has a tie to this all of a sudden resurrected lawsuit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, filed not too long ago, for accusing them of RICO involving the Sedition Act. That Attorney General William Barr is now going, oh, that's an excellent idea. We can use that on protesters. As it's being used on the church by a protester. And so, yeah, let's go over the Mormon involvements. So yes, we have martial law during the time of sedition involving the church again. But American Revolution, this established America as a constitutional republic. Nobody talks about America like that. Nobody. Very frustrating. It's like the concept just doesn't even occur to people, as our election this year is whether we want to be communist or Nazis. Isn't that wonderful? But anyway, the American Revolution was saying we don't want a monarchy for our government anymore. We're dropping you, King George III. And so as a result, American Revolution. Now, interestingly, on the 1st of May, before we declared independence, in 1776, there was the beginning of an organization called the Illuminati, founded by Johann Adam Weishaupt. The Johann is given to Germans as part of their christening name, from what I understand doing genealogy. And so that's why you'll only find him under Adam Weishaupt, though if you type in Johann Adam Weishaupt, it'll come up listing Adam Weishaupt for you. But his organization was a retaliatory one. German Jews were not allowed, and in fact in pretty much all of Europe, were not allowed to own property. Bad enough that 2,000 years of Christian persecution of Jews still continued after 2,000 years. And so here you have people who come from Judaism who do not represent Jews, but those of the Illuminati spread the lies that Jews are to blame when they are the ones to blame, which is interesting, as a diversionary misinformation tactic. And it's where people are fed misinformation and then they puppet that misinformation to other people. That's part of a war strategy. In the beginning, you first infiltrate into your enemy camp, your enemy society, and you start spreading misinformation and disinformation. You find a confidant and gain relationships of trust with them, and then you start filling their head with principles and precepts that will cause division. And so in America, we're all about the dichotomous relationships of controversy, not just male and female, but political, liberal versus conservative, all that. But and then I've already talked about how a Mormon was involved in categorizing that for psychiatry, and thus is used as a weaponry tactic. But the Illuminati decided that the Catholic Church needed to be stopped, that the Dark Ages needed to go away with the Enlightenment period, and thus Illumination was the name of their organization. And to embrace that, they had to select a symbol that represented the enemy of Christian Catholicism, as well as their standing as illuminated, enlightened ones, to bring the world out of the Dark Ages. And so thus the Illuminati, with the symbol of the inverted pentagram, that's the falling star mentioned in Isaiah. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? That first came about with the Latin Vulgate text, because in Latin, Venus is named Lucifer. And so they adopted Lucifer as the sign of Venus, as coming from Isaiah, to take care of both worlds. The contrariness to Catholicism, Christianity, and against the Dark Ages of mankind, and the stupidity and the the ignorance that had resulted from the Christian false doctrines blinding the people to science, as the Catholic Church is well known for their assassinations and torture of enlightened scientists. And so what their tactic was to infiltrate, become popular, and of course they're spreading the misinformation, disinformation among them as part of their popularity, showing that, hey, I'm one of you, we're great, we're awesome, but at the same time sowing in misinformation and disinformation to turn people away from what they were supposed to be, depending on the organization, sowing the seeds of division. And then as they rise in popularity, they rise in rank, and their intention was to eventually rise up into a position to take over as leaders. That's a well-established war tactic that has proven successful in history, and they've utilized it, and they've done very well with it since that time of their organization. And so there was one incident that was broken up in 1800 in the United States. But the Illuminati came back as they obtained a funder by the name of Nathan Rothschild. And so that's where the whole banker connection comes in with the anti-Semitic, which I'm trying to help people understand. Jews are not from Babylon. That's where they were taken hostage in captivity in, was Babylon. Jews come from Egypt, which is Hamido. And so if you're trash-talking Jews, being abusive to Jews, you're anti-Hamido, not anti-Semitic. The Babylonians were the bad guys. And so we don't want to be calling Jews the bad guys when calling them the bad guys who are the bad guys. So, yeah, nobody wants to listen to me. And so the War of 1812 was not Canada burning down the White House, as Trump wants us to believe in his revisionist history of America, but was the British Army paid for by Nathan Rothschild to come in and conquer America, to try to put a monarchy back on the throne of America. And of course we know that they lost, but Congress conceded, and that's probably why it ended. I'd have to go back and check the history on the War of 1812. But Congress agreed to return to a central banking system. That's why the War of 1812 got started, is Nathan Rothschild's central bank here in the United States was canceled by the United States Congress. And so he paid for the War of 1812 to return America back to a central banking system. In that War of 1812, there was a Captain William Morgan who served under General Andrew Jackson, who would later go on to become President of the United States, and who, by the end of his second term, succeeded in, again, stopping the central bank. But his predecessors returned to a central banking system. So, that's a little background on that. But Captain William Morgan learned some secret classified information working under General Andrew Jackson. And after the War of 1812, he came to Western New York about 12 years later. It's uncertain as to which year he originally came and started talking about it, but he had been hoping to get a book written, a couple of books actually, written and published about the information that he had learned from the War of 1812, and had finally found in Western New York a press that was willing to front him the money so that he could work on those books. It was the Batavian Press in Batavia, New York. And he went around trying to find a York Rites Freemason lodge that would listen to him and his warning. And he came to Canandaigua, New York. And we know he came to Canandaigua, New York, because that's where he started getting arrested. And he was unable to continue with the publication of his book because of constantly getting arrested. Sort of sounds like Joseph Smith, who was constantly getting arrested, and they talk about it here in the Illinois Mormon War under martial law in the United States on Wikipedia. And so we know that William Morgan had been communicating with the York Rites Lodge there in Canandaigua, as Batavia was in the other district, and they had them zoned. Each section in western New York was either a York Rites or a Scottish Rites masonry, and you can't mix them. You can't have in Canandaigua both a Scottish and a York Rites. It's either one or the other. They specifically zoned it for that purpose. And then there's some other qualifications that existed prior to 1826, which after 1826 they were sort of a little more laxed, just to try to rebuild themselves due to the anti-Mason movement that occurred in 1826 from what happened to William Morgan. And William Morgan, it was clear after the second arrest that he wasn't going to be able to publish his books. The one had to do with the Lewis and Clark expedition involving the Mandan Indian tribe. And if you don't know about the Kensington Stone of the Knights Templar, and if you don't know that the Knights Templar is the highest rank in the York Rites, and if you don't know about the Illuminati from the War of 1812 and 1800, and again they were on the rise as William Morgan came to Canandaigua to tell the Master Mason of the York Rites Lodge there in Canandaigua. And they don't tell us who the Master Mason is of Canandaigua Lodge, New York. Neither does Heber C. Kimball tell who the Master Mason is, whom he said he's put in a petition to become a 7th rank Royal Ark degree. Well, it's not degree in New York. Royal Ark rank in the York Rites at Canandaigua, and whom he says he was approved by. He does not list the name of this Master Mason at the Canandaigua Lodge. Do I hold you in suspense? Do I make you go and search all my real LDS Church videos to find out who I'm talking about? But yes, Joseph Smith Sr. And so if you read the book that was attributed to William Morgan by the Batavian Press in order to get their money back for the lost investment, you learn all about the role of a Master Mason in the performance of the rituals, but also in his personal life, how he is responsible for everything that happens within his district, his lodge area. And so, yes, he knew all about William Morgan. Yes, he knew all about his arrest. And yes, he had something to do with his disappearance. And yes, he had something to do with continuing the publication of the books with the warnings and about the Mandan Indian tribe with Chief Great White as well, involving the Knights Templar and the Illuminati and the war between the two, because the Knights Templar were all about establishing America, the United States, as the New Jerusalem in southern Illinois, because of X marks the spot on the 8th of April 2024. If you don't know the significance of that, then you've already forgotten the 21st of August 2017. And so the Illuminati had yet again found in the Scottish Rites, Freemasonry, a another organization from which they could infiltrate, rise up into popularity and prominence and rank in the Scottish Rites degrees, to eventually run for political office and thus eventually run for the President of the United States, at which time their puppet president would turn America into a monarchy again. And this was the tactic that William Morgan was trying to warn about. And how do we know that? Yeah, there's a certain book that got published by Joseph Smith Sr. using Martin Harris to publish the book through another press company rather than the Batavian Press, because they were trying to keep it on the down low so that Smith Sr. would therefore not be arrested time and time again to prevent the publication of the book. And it's interesting how Joseph Smith, time and time again, after let me find out, because he did get arrested in 1826 for his glass looking. Joseph Smith, time in jail. It's a Wikipedia page. Joseph Smith and the Criminal Justice System from Wikipedia. And okay, arrested for disorderly person in June of 1830. So April, May, June. Didn't take long. But then it wasn't until, looks like 1837. That's interesting. Let me confirm. Okay, disorderly person, March 1826. Disorderly person, 1830. It was Constable Ebenezer Hatch, Scrooge. He was transported to Bainbridge again. That's where he was arrested for glass looking in March of 1826, which we have documents of. Let's see, Joseph Smith was acquitted on that one. So yeah, he was not guilty. And so, yeah, 1837 is the next time, which is after 1833, when the Youngs and the Kimballs joined the church. Youngs and Kimballs were Scottish Rites, even though Heber tries to claim that he was York Rites on his Wikipedia page under Masonry. Sorry, wrong district. And so yeah, that's what happened. Is the 116 pages of the Book of Mormon were destroyed by Martin Harris. Why? Martin Harris was on the anti-Mason committee in Palmyra. And so he's destroying this document, the first 116 pages, from Joseph Smith Sr., who enlists the help of Sidney Rigdon in a Freemasonic document about a threat to America. Well, it's therefore clear that it was too supportive of York Rites Freemasonry. And Martin Harris was under the impression that all Freemasonry is bad, not just Scottish Rites, because in order to save America, York Rites had to go down also as guilty, as also part of the cover as well. If you've ever seen a movie where the bad guy also causes harm to his operation to throw off the FBI or whatever. That's a similar tactic. Because there could be no connection with Joseph Smith Sr. and William Morgan. None. He's got to cover it and sever it. And the fact that William Morgan came to Joseph Smith Sr. already puts the whole operation in jeopardy. And so, yes, there's a lot of paranoia going on. And that's why Sidney Rigdon was involved and didn't join the church until December, and gets paid by being able to fulfill his desire to rewrite the whole Bible with what became known now in the Mormon Church here in Utah as the the Joseph Smith translation, the church that Emma's church, I believe it is, who got possession of that work, called it the Revised Translation, or the Revised version of the Bible. But that's how they were able to pay Sidney Rigdon, was through allowing him to become a part of a bigger organization than just his little Ohio congregation, as they put in Parley P. Pratt, who was a member of his congregation. They put some of Parley's quotes in the beginning of the replacement of the 116 pages to then have Parley P. Pratt bump into missionaries who give him a Book of Mormon, and then he reads it and go, hey, this is something I would have said. Yeah, no duh. Oh, you want to join the church now because they say what you said. Isn't that interesting? But that's how he then was able to distance Senior from Rigdon, was getting Parley P. Pratt to be the go-between. And so this is all necessary to prevent, as best as they can, the Illuminati from the Scottish Rites of finding out who was responsible for preventing their coup d'etat of America back then. The presidential election was going to be held in 1828. And as communication is not what it is today, you sort of had to run for office a couple years in advance to get people to go around talking about you to the rest of the nation. And so 1826, it was clear they were going to put a presidential candidate on the ballot to run for president and take it over in 1828's election. But the anti-Mason movement put a complete stop to that. And it almost kept President Andrew Jackson from becoming president, because he was well known as a York Rites Mason. And since they had to destroy all Masonry in order to protect it, which they got some great assistance from the reporter who did not understand and blamed all of Masonry. Oh, the church is involved in another martial law event, the Great Chicago Fire. The papyra, the Egyptian papyra, was thought to have been burned in the Great Chicago Fire, but eventually we realized that it got transported to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Interesting. And then there's a Idaho thing. I wonder if that has anything to do with Mormons. Huh. Mormons have a long history in the United States. Involved in everything. Yeah, as we all know now, they were successful in getting the book written, published, and and they started spreading it around America to try to get a group who would, in the future, rise up against their next planned attack. Because the Illuminati found out that it was the Yorkites, they then used the Yorkites' plans to be destruction plans instead of creating Zion and New Jerusalem plans to fulfill biblical prophecy. And and so instead of the first year of the presidential candidate, when the sign of the Son of Man occurs on the 23rd of September 2017, which means the presidential election in 2016, thus the first year of the president in 2017 when he is inaugurated, was to be the date. And that was the plan, was to get their guy setting up the United States to make this all happen for that presidential campaign, and thus take over America and turn it into a monarchy once again in the first year. So the Book of Mormon tells us exactly those plans by the Illuminati, as they use the Babylonian version of events to talk about the future events here in America. So the Book of Mormon starts off with, in the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, king of Jerusalem, who was put on the throne as a puppet king to Babylon. Babylon put him on the throne. Then this character Lehi, Jawbone in Hebrew, goes around telling the people Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. America's going to be destroyed. And then he has a dream. And in the dream, he has the sign of the Son of Man appear to him in the heavens. So we know that corresponds with John's revelation that gives us the precise date, 23rd September 2017. If you know your astronomy and how Jupiter is the only one that retrogrades within each constellation for a pregnancy period of time, and all the other features that are necessary, which provides us with an exact day and hour, despite what Matthew tells us we don't know, even though he tells us the date, confirming by repeating and quoting from Isaiah, where it begins in the Bible. And but regardless, the Book of Mormon is written in an encoded message telling stories claiming to be actual characters from indigenous American history. And then you have white Lamanites, or white indigenous American Indians, and black indigenous American Indians, in the coded sense of light versus darkness rather than racist skin color differences. But the skin color racism was used to exemplify the contrasting coding symbolism, is because the Nephites were the ones who were actually the evil people who get destroyed for their wickedness, as the Lamanites were the conquerors in the end. And so people get confused when they just read a surface rendering after we've had our emancipation and civil rights movements to attempt to give equality to all people, not treat people as animals or subhumans or unworthy of being considered for equal justice and rights to life, liberty, and property. And so if you think we've got it bad now with cops killing blacks, it was worse in the early 1800s. And so Joseph Smith Jr., when he ran for president in 1844, he was the first presidential candidate to run as an abolitionist. He was going to abolish slavery. And so that also played a part in why it was necessary to murder him as quick as possible. But like I said, the tactic of the Illuminati was infiltrate, rise up in popularity among the organization, rise up in rank, and then take over the organization. And that's exactly what happened. The group was called the Danites. The Danites were those who were converted to the church by Brigham and Heber C. Kimball, Scottish Rites. The church has on their website an article about Brigham Young's mission experiences, and tells us that Brigham Young, once he joined the church in 1833, went on his mission without a companion, because Joseph Smith said 2 by 2. Brigham didn't always follow that. Occasionally he met up with Heber C. Kimball, who also went alone on his mission, but they specifically went to their original hometown area where Scottish Rites disincorporated members who were angry and wanted revenge were now being told, hey, we found the people responsible, they formed their own organization, let's get them. And so they called themselves the Danites, which in Hebrew is called the Judges. The people of the Judges, technically, when you call yourself an ite, you're a people of. And so, who then are the judges? Well, Brigham Young is the judge. Heber C. Kimball is the judge. So, a big difference from Joseph and Hiram Smith. And, yeah, chaos ensues. I'm the one who call what happened by the Danites in 1838 as the leadership crisis. That's where the Danites took advantage of, again, having Joseph Smith falsely arrested, and had Thomas B. Marsh chased out of the church from his presidential position with the missionary group that Brigham was a part of, and they, of course, had to twist it around to say that they were the leadership of the church in the absence of Joseph, rather than all they had authority to do was be missionaries to say, hey, Joseph Smith says this, the Book of Mormon says this. No, they exalted themselves like a certain Lucifer character in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 14:7. 14:12, sorry. It's chapter 7 of Isaiah that talks about the Holy Grail of the Knights Templar. And so, yes, that's why Joseph Smith calls Jesus Christ Son Amen. It's because of the Holy Grail and Knights Templar for the Jewish version of the Messiah in the latter days, a mortal man. But even Mormons don't even know that. It's like, what? I never heard this before, Travis. I've been a member all my life. The church has never told me that. Yeah, I know they haven't told you. They haven't told me either. So, yeah, Joseph and Hiram were assassinated in Carthage jail because of the Illinois Mormon War, as the Danites kept rising up, despite Joseph calling Brigham Young a Judas for getting rid of Thomas B. Marsh. And then, after he got out of jail again, calling the whole quorum Judas. God, what a nightmare. So yeah, two of Brigham Young's lackeys in that missionary group, Willard Richards and John Taylor, just happened to be the ones with Joseph and Hiram. And so yeah, Joseph obtaining my third great grandfather's single shot and then getting a 6-shooter from another guy that visited, sort of put a damper on getting away with their crimes, as I'm able to go over the evidence now and go, oh crap, it was an inside hit. Yeah, the Nauvoo Temple tells us all anyway, as Joseph and Hiram are the sunstones of San Amun, and the inverted pentagram is on top of them, having murdered them, and then the Jewish star on the upper underneath awning, showing that it's the Jewish version of Christ rather than the Christian Trinity Constantine version of Christ. And then you have the stained glass window inverted pentagram as the leader of the pack, Brigham Young. But I've already gone over all that. So yeah, this is a presidential candidate who's assassinated by the Illuminati. And here we are, an Illuminati presidential candidate who's now destroying America as planned to turn it into a monarchy. As a certain somebody has filed sedition charges against the church because of their Illuminati backing in history. And so yeah, that's the Illinois Mormon War, martial law incident that occurred. And so then they have the Utah, during the Utah War, and they don't connect it to Joseph Smith. If you don't know anything about Joseph Smith and you're just finding out for the first time by looking up martial law in the United States, you'd have no clue that Brigham Young was a part of that. They don't tell you. They don't make the connection. But yeah, Brigham Young fled America, founded Deseret by murdering the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And yeah, the Eagle Gate is confirmation that Brigham Young was indeed Illuminati. So it has the eagle on top of the beehive, which is Freemasonry symbolism, and then the inverted star, or the falling star of Lucifer, as the foundation of the Ark of the Seagull Gate, Keystone. And yeah, so the Illuminati, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and American history all play a central role involving martial law in the United States.